Thank you very much for coming along to these two presentations. They are really, really interesting and excellent, innovative presentations from a partnership between Liverpool City College and Hopwood Hall, and Sheffield Lifelong Learning did one on their own. So I will hand over to their wonderful mentor, Sonia, to introduce the projects. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, we have two fantastic projects. So you're going to hear much more about both of them, but I'll just do a little summary. So I'm going to introduce you first to Nicola McLean and Sian Walker, who've been working together on a project to engage reluctant writers using a range of creative writing activities. And not only, I think, to help them improve their writing, but also to develop their confidence and their expression and those less tangible things that make a huge difference to us as individuals, enable us to express ourselves and to feel that they're making a real change. Okay, so that's one of the projects. The second project that we're going to hear about is led by Rachel Greenslade at Sheffield Lifelong Learning, and that was again about developing writing skills, but really interestingly using the tool of listening to do that. So the idea that listening helps people to tap into a knowledge and understanding of grammatical structures that they already have, and thinking about ways in which that could assist people to develop their understanding of how that could be applied in their writing. So another really exciting project which Rachel is going to talk about. And I'd just say one more thing about both projects. I think both projects are a testimony to the creativity not only of the project teams, but also that kind of runs through FE, you know, that kind of willingness to really try different things, and also a testimony to the creativity of the students. So you'll see that on both projects the students produce creative work and they develop their creative expression, and that's fantastic to see running through both projects. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you hear from the project leads. We're going to start first of all with Sian at Hopwood Hall and Nicola at City of Liverpool, and I'm just going to hand over to you both. If you need anything, just let me know. I'll keep an eye on the chat in case people raise any questions. We'll have about 5 minutes hopefully for discussion questions after the first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm going to try and share my screen now. And as I'm doing that, have we got the slideshow?
Yeah, it's working, Sian.
Perfect.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I'm pretty nervous about doing this anyway, but I'm even more nervous to see that Jean's watching us, because she's the kind of, I've seen Jean at these conferences a couple of times now, and I'm just mesmerised when she speaks, and I'm really touched by what she said earlier on about almost having a responsibility to share knowledge. And what I'd like to say is that in the last few weeks at Hopwood, we've been preparing the GCSE curriculum and the scheme of work and so on for next year. We are expecting Ofsted at Hopwood. We've been saying that for 2 years as well. And we're taking on some of the learning from this college and trying something quite new and exciting that's been shaped by this project this year. So that sharing that knowledge is happening already. Okay, so this is a collaboration between Liverpool City College and Hopwood Hall College. And it's a very brief presentation that we're going to talk you through. Sorry, my whippet's just come to join in. So I'm just going to very briefly go through the kind of what, why and how, and then talk about the results that we came up with. So to start with, in short, the focus was very much about developing creative writing skills. to mainly male learners, and I'll qualify that in a few minutes, age 16 to 19. So the study program learners who are doing very traditionally male-dominated courses such as motor vehicle construction, media production, gaming. And we found that they were they're quite limited in their approaches to creative writing skills, and they saw it as a real chore. So they were all on one-year GCSE resit courses. So all learners in these groups already had either a grade 2 or a grade 3 at GCSE. And we found that there was a real lack of engagement and energy, as there is a lot with FE resits in maths and in English in FE. It does feel like a punishment to a lot of learners, but we thought that that was particularly the case in creative writing. And what I put at the top there is a little picture of a cover of a book that I would strongly recommend anybody to have a look at. Now, it's written very much aimed at school teachers, and it really tries to sort of debunk these myths about boys and that learning gap that we're all aware of, that's very well publicised anyway. And that was really kind of in the initial discussions that I had, that was what really pushed us and what really inspired us to take this project down the route that we did. Okay, so why did we do it? Well, as English practitioners, we believe that creative writing is very good for your well-being. In fact, a number of us who are here today had a little creative writing group last year, which we got together every so often. Sue led on it, and we all really enjoyed it. And we wanted to share that. We wanted to share that enjoyment with our learners. We also wanted to break down barriers and stereotypes, and interestingly, we sort of fell foul to the stereotypes whilst trying to challenge them. And again, I'll come to that in a second. And debunking myths around creative writing, because it is often seen as something that girls do better than boys, and that's just simply not the case. We wanted to reduce anxiety, low self-belief. We wanted to help to support any mental health issues and create a platform where learners could be free to express themselves in writing. We wanted to remove stigma and promote equality. So remove the stigma of creative writing being a traditional girly activity. And again, a lot of the work that we did was around some of the kind of myths and stereotypes that are reported in that book, Boys Don't Try, and actually what happens if you walk away from those stereotypes and how powerful it can be. Nicola, did you want to add anything at this stage?
No, that's fine. We're okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we got our heads together, and we collaborated with Liverpool City College. So Hopwood Hall College is actually just in North Manchester. It's one of the 10 Greater Manchester colleges. We anonymised the work and asked the students to select pseudonyms. And that was a journey in itself, because many of these pseudonyms were I certainly wouldn't present them at this stage because they were a bit undesirable. But the learners led on the topics. They selected the topic. They selected the pace and style of the writing. Okay. The feedback then happened peer-to-peer. There was no tutor involvement at all. So we would scan through. So Liverpool City, Hopwood, we'd scan through the work that the learners done visually, just to make sure there was nothing highly inappropriate, and then send it across electronically to the partner college. And then the learners would review each other's work with comments such as, how did it make you feel reading this? And how would you feel if you had that writing prompt? So learners were choosing their own writing prompts. This was a really difficult thing for me to do, is to just eliminate this process of correcting spag. I do it all the time. I do it when I'm out and about. You know, I'm sure I do it in my sleep. It's so heavily embedded for us to do that, but it's really quite liberating when you let that go and let the learners just write and just be creative. Okay, so in terms of results, when we first asked the learners if you could write about anything at all, nothing to do with GCSE type topics, anything at all, what would you write about? And some of them did almost fulfill the stereotype and said football. There were some worrying pieces of writing where there was a bit of hostility, because Liverpool and Manchester, historically, there's a lot of rivalry between the football teams, and that's kind of what that turned into. So we turned that into an opportunity to promote equality and diversity and say, well, that's great. It's great you've got a team you believe in and you really support, and it's great that you have. Let's just agree that that's great. So that helped things to kind of simmer down, and then they didn't feel like they had to do any of those things that we don't want males to do anymore, like man up and be confrontational, and you know, so they stopped that. We ditched the spag, as I've already mentioned, and that drastically reduced their inhibitions when they didn't think it was going to come back to them with lots and lots of negative feedback on it.
Sean, sorry, with ditching the spag, a lot of the learners, especially at Liverpool College, were more confident just to write and just to express themselves and their thoughts and opinions, which linked into what Sean was saying about equality and diversity. They just went for it, which is something they've never done before, and they really enjoyed that aspect of it. Of me and the tutors not saying you need to put a full stop there, a capital letter, and that did help improve. Sorry, Sean, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right, and you know, these learners were very different levels. Some came in with a grade 2 or a level 1 functional skill, and some had a grade 3 at GCSE. So there was a huge range of learners really within that cohort. Now, the really interesting thing for me was that when we did the teacher assessed grades at Hopwood, 15 out of this cohort, they had a choice between a transactional writing task, which was a letter, or a creative writing task or narrative writing, and 7 out of 15 of them chose the creative or narrative writing towards their tag grade. And the results, we had our centre visit yesterday actually from AQA at Hopwood, and they're not going to challenge any of the grades, and if that's the case, all of these learners will achieve a grade 4 or above. And I just think that in itself is testimony to that they've got that confidence to, first of all, to choose that task, and secondly, to really do it well enough to push them into grade 4, some of them with grade 2 as a starting point. And as I alluded to at the beginning of this presentation, sorry, somebody bought me a cuckoo clock for my birthday, and it's just going off in the background now, and it's a bit of a crazy cuckoo clock. It never does the same amount of cuckoos to the time, so we might be here a while. Okay. Rethinking approaches to the delivery of writing skills is capture the creativity first and think about the technical accuracy afterwards, and that's what we're going to do with a number of groups next year at Hopwood, because my colleagues actually were quite surprised at the results we got just by that really simple tweak to the way that we teach it. Okay, so Nicola, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I just want to say, when we tested our learners with the tag process, we did all students were given a creative writing task, and this particular group that we used and we worked with, particularly on this project, about 60% of them actually improved the grade from the creative writing task they'd done at Christmas. So things have improved, and it's been a great project and a great opportunity for learners to improve. And I think having that ability just to write and be themselves, with not the worry about spag being there straight away, has shown some great improvements for us and for our learners, and especially for boys who want to be work in the construction industry, and they didn't like writing at all. They did not want to write, they didn't feel comfortable writing, and just seeing the improvements has been a great pleasure over the last few months with the learners. So that's it. Any questions for us at all?
I think, can I just add as well at this point, there were 2 girls who joined the group too, and that they were moved actually from a group they were originally, because their course timetable changed. They were moved into this particular GCSE group, and they both chose to be part of this as well, and they really enjoyed it as well. They really enjoyed it too. So I think we didn't plan it to work out that way, but because of the change in timetables and girls joining, I was a little bit worried that the boys would start to feel really inhibited again. The male learners would start to feel really inhibited again, but they didn't. They already owned the project, you know. So when the female learners joined, they were explaining to them what we were doing and what was expected, which was really lovely to see.
Kirsty's got a question for you, Sian and Nicola.
Yeah, hello. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, what did they, so firstly, amazing presentation, and I love the idea, and Louise Sparrow, who I think's in here, is a colleague of mine. We were talking about just this the other day and the potential merits of it, so I'm really interested, and I think it's a great idea. what did, if anything, did the learners articulate how they felt when you ditched the spag, the correcting of the spag? Did any of them sort of articulate it in their own words as well as you seeing the difference? I'm just interested in that.
So not so much the ditching of the spag, but the fact that another student would see it. So initially they weren't sort of saying, oh, this is great, you're not going to mark me for spelling, punctuation and grammar. Their biggest inhibition at first was, you can't send this over, you can't scan it and email it over to another college because nobody can read my writing. That was more the thing they were worried about than actually the spelling, punctuation and grammar side of it.
Really, really interesting. Thank you.
And Sharon's got a question as well.
I thought I knew Sue.
Yeah, I don't mind going to the back of the queue.
Oh, okay. What I was interested in is, did you do any scaffolding first of all, you know, or did you just dive in with the writing? I was just wondering whether you had to bolster a bit of ego by doing a few activities beforehand, shorter pieces of writing, that kind of thing, or did you just go, let's work with what you really want to write about and go straight in?
Yeah, Nicola, do you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so what initially we said that, as I mentioned earlier, whatever you can write about, anything you want to write about, anything that interests you at all, and they were fine with that. But then the ideas kind of dried up a little bit. And, you know, I don't really want to go on about this because we've all been in the same boat this year, but the lockdown period really, really negatively affected this project. And we had to rethink a lot of what we were doing under Sonia's guidance. So at one point, we started using pieces of art, modern art, or a piece of music to play that to the learners and ask them to write down their kind of initial emotional responses to that, because we were quite limited in what we could share between the colleges at that stage. Mainly because a lot of the learners weren't engaging online with lessons, particularly in completing pieces of writing. So we did have different prompts as the project progressed.
Lovely, thanks.
And I think Melanie has got a question for you as well.
Yes, thanks. At what stage did you introduce the SPAG, and how was it received?
We just didn't. As the year went on, we didn't do it. What we found was some of the learners, and I am going to qualify this by saying probably the stronger ones, they started to proofread and correct their own work. And I think that is something else that I feel quite strongly about, is the more we correct learners' work in terms of SPAG, the more they depend on us to do it, and the less they are autonomous writers. And if what happens in many cases, I'm the head of English at Hopwood, and what happens in many cases is I see my staff are actually doing the proofreading for the learners, because they're not setting up this environment where the learners proofread their own work. So we said, no, we're not going to do it at all. And we didn't give them any length. It could be a sentence, it could be a side, it could be 2 paragraphs, it could be two sentences. They were the masters of it. And we just found that they were starting to look at it themselves.
I think a lot of the students took ownership in that as well, in looking at their own work and stopping for using full stops and stopping for a breath once they were reading the piece of work that they'd done. I think Sean's right, giving them that opportunity just to reflect, and it was the more able learners as well who were able to reflect more on the work that they were completing for us.
Okay, thank you.
Louise, you had a question?
Thank you. I did. I was just going to ask, actually, but then you kind of answered it. I was just interested to see the thoughts of the staff, really, because, you know, for some colleagues, it can be that SPAG is so important. It needs to be at the very forefront of everything that we do. And I just was interested as to whether you had any of that kickback within your team, or whether it was sort of, you know, your end result was so successful that you could kind of say, this is probably the best way for our learners.
It was my sales pitch with the team when we were at the planning stage. So I was saying, spelling in itself, you know, kind of needs to be turned on its head, because some tutors swear by still doing kind of spelling tests for most commonly misspelled words and so on. And that has been proven not to be any use whatsoever unless you put those words into context, you know. So I think we do need to think about SPAG, and for us as practitioners of English, it's massively important. But we also have to understand it's not so important for our learners. They just want to get that grade 4 and kind of not have to do English again. The staff, there was quite a lot of reluctance. So I showed them the evidence. I showed them the work that had been done by the learners at both colleges. And what they said was that they felt more comfortable. And I said, well, let's try and introduce it later on. Let's start with the creativity. And I just scaffolded and produced a couple of lessons showing how we could do that. Because you please don't, the important thing is not to underestimate what the learners already know. They don't always get it right. They don't always get it perfect, but they must have a level of English to be where they are now. And you know, that's what we need to really encourage.
Definitely. I think when you spoke a moment ago about how your albeit more able learners then became more independent and able to make the changes themselves, that's case in point for it, isn't it, really? It's just about allowing them the time, because no doubt they've spent the last 5 years of their learning journey being told that X, Y, and Z is incorrect every time, so they may as well not bother try. So no, really, really grateful, really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing.
Can I I've got an observation and a question, if I may. My observation is, when we are presented with long assignments to write, whether you're doing your Cert Ed or a Master's or whatever situation you're in, what is the natural route that we go down? We start off with the creativity, then we do the drafting and what have you. And it's not till we get to the end of the process that we start editing and spagging and what have you. So I think that what Sian and Nicola did was just emulating what we do naturally ourselves, where if you're foregrounding spag, whenever I get an assignment to write or somebody asks me to write an article, I don't go and look up in the dictionary how to spell all the words that I'm going to use first. That's not my starting point. That's my end point. And Claire, if she's still in here, has a really good analogy about this, checking yourself in the mirror before you go out.
Yeah, it's a bit like you put some clothes on, don't you? You're fully dressed. It's if you want to go into a posh place, you start worrying about whether you've got your nice bits on. And spelling, punctuation and grammar is the finery around the edge, isn't it? It's about, writing's about getting what's inside your head out so that other people can understand your thoughts. And sometimes spag does impede on that. If it's but it's got to be the learners who are saying, I want people to understand what I'm saying. This is my work. I want to dress it up. It's got to come from them.
I've just got one thing leading on for you. My question, actually, Claire, just picking up on what you've just said there. To what extent do you think that the learners having an audience, somebody who wanted to read what they'd written, contributed to the success of the project?
Yeah. So we had planned at the end of the year to get all the learners together, and clearly that hasn't been possible, and they were quite disappointed about it. We wanted to physically have a trip where they all met each other and if they wanted to reveal their pseudonyms and who they really were and so on. And I think that knowing that one day, it's a bit like that kind of anonymity people have or think they have on social media or on the internet, you know. But when you know that your anonymity is not going to be forever, you do start to check yourself a little bit, you know, and they were doing that too. And at first it was like, oh, you know, when I see so-and-so, you know, Kevin Keegan the King or whatever, I'm going to tell him this, that, you know. And then they were getting quite intrigued. It was almost like some crazy sort of blind dating, you know, some creative writing blind date thing by the people they met. And I'm just really sorry that we didn't get to bring the learners together to meet in the way that we'd originally planned.
Yeah, I think you can hear, Sian, how excited people are to hear your project. It's absolutely fantastic. So I think we're really looking forward to reading your report. And I think it raises a lot of issues. I mean, just briefly to say that you're going to hear from Rachel now, and you're going to hear some of the same issues occurring. So thinking about what kind of feedback and what kind of assessment kind of has emerged from Rachel's process that she's going to describe now, and thinking about what's similar in terms of Sian and Nicola's work would be really interesting, and maybe at the end we have a little bit of time to draw it together a bit, because it's really striking some of the similarities that are coming through. So yeah, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to move on so that we can hear Rachel, but I think that was wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you. Really great. And we've had more time, we just keep talking, won't we? So yeah, so we're just going to just check. Rachel, are you okay? Are you kind of lined up with your...
Yeah, shall I share my screen?
Yeah, that would be wonderful, thank you.
So can we see?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's scarily smooth. I have to, as Sean had her whippet, I've got my Labradoodle at my feet, so I'm apologising in advance for any inadvertent and aggressive barking. Not me. I've written down, how do I follow that? In fact, I wrote that down this morning and I've just underlined it. We've had so much deep thought today, so many impressive projects, working on such a large scale. I'm just starting my timer, by the way. And our research, which was quite different in that it was amongst adult learners studying functional skills English in community settings, feels a lot more modest and petite in its proportions than a lot of what I've heard about this morning. It just started with one group of 8 level 2 learners, all female, last September, but it has extended slowly. Another colleague is now on board, Louise, the lovely Louise, who is here. Thank you so much, Louise, for your help. And now we're finally trying that approach across 2 more cohorts. We've been doing that in recent months. So the premise of the project really, it was all about helping learners to improve their writing skills by building better sentences, better and stronger sentences. You'll notice I've used Ofsted's framework again: intent, implementation and impact. I'm not necessarily an Ofsted fan, but I do find this quite helpful. After 25 years of teaching English, that really frightened me when I wrote that down, in a variety of contexts now, I still find teaching grammar and seeing grammar on the page probably the greatest challenge. How to draw out, which is very interesting in terms of what we've just been talking about, how to draw out clear grammar and grammar that makes sentences strong and robust and meaningful. So I hope you'll agree with me when I've written English teachers are often frustrated and sometimes baffled by the teaching, learning and use of accurate grammar. I've just been told this meeting is being recorded. Is that okay? I'll carry on. This grammar is not about box ticking for me, but it's about being a clear, confident communicator. And we need these structures, don't we, in our sentences and in our work in order to help people understand what it is we're trying to say, which is really what good English is all about. So I wanted to develop an approach which would help to target particularly stubborn patterns of grammatical error that I've noticed in my learners, many of whom are from an ESOL background, and I really felt their frustration. And I wanted to give them a way to be able to confidently take control of the accuracy and the clarity of what they were writing. So I've just got a little quote from our project. I didn't need to get rid of me so I can see it. A little quote from our first paragraph of the report. This project aimed to address the disconnect between the speaking and writing skills of many of our adult learners, particularly those from an ESOL background. And the project enabled them to use innate grammar instincts gained from their everyday use and experience of spoken English to then build stronger and clearer sentences on the page. And I really wanted to explore and exploit this relationship between spoken and written grammar, because I had noticed that that learners, all our learners, but particularly those from an ESOL background, spoke far more accurately and clearly and confidently than they wrote. And so it seemed to me that this could be harnessed as a resource to help them then recognise and correct the mistakes that they made on paper. And so that's when this concept, if that's too strong a word, perhaps this idea of grammar ears began. I was very grateful to be given a 10-week employability and skills course by the council who we work for to use this concept to try and improve the writing of level 2 learners. So this is the course that started just for 10 weeks last September now, which seems like eons ago. And so I just kind of got the basic facets of what we were trying to do. These 6 points. So it was very much a back to basics approach, and it was focused on grammar alone. Spelling and punctuation were left aside. And again, we had a huge relief for many of the learners that they didn't have to worry about spelling. And the idea was to give them a kind of deeper understanding of these grammatical tools that we were using. Also, we decided early on in conjunction with the learners that we were going to scrap all the functional skills, formalized type of writing, and we're going to go very much for a creative writing with an autobiographical focus. And this has such, as we've heard earlier today, such an incredible effect because learners are invested in what they're writing. They're engaged, they're interested in each other's writings because they're writing their own stories and they want to know more about each other. It created such a wonderful community of people sharing their life experiences, these women from different backgrounds and different life experiences at different ages. It was very, very bonding. I know it sounds a cliche, but there's something very beautiful about it. It was a great freedom as well in what they were writing. Thirdly, Sonia beautifully put this earlier, probably better than I will now, this idea of then harnessing the innate grammar resource. I really think the ear is attuned to harmonious grammar. I like to think of it as like music. So if we know a song, we can hear a wrong note. And it's the same idea with grammar, I think. If we say to someone when they've written a sentence and they read it out loud, does that sound right? And they will say no. And then if you say, well, hang on, why not? Give them a moment or so. And very often they will correct it because they had the answer all along. And there is this idea that through those everyday interactions, when they don't even realize they're learning, when they're kind of absorbing it subconsciously, subliminally, they hear their children talk, they hear the radio, the television is on maybe in the background, they have a conversation with someone at the school gate. All the time they are absorbing grammar from around them, and that kind of leaves them with these oral memories that can then work as a bank of grammatical knowledge. This, again, this innate resource that they can come back to. And I really have seen this working. It's fascinating and quite a joy when people kind of grasp this idea that they already have a lot of this knowledge, as again we've already heard. It was also really great to have the learners working together, so not just listening to themselves out loud, but listening to each other out loud. And this idea of critical friends, encouraging collaborative writing, and they ended up not just listening to correct grammar, but listening to make the writing better. So we were having kind of unintentional writing workshops where they'd listen to someone's sentence and say, it would sound better if you did it this way. And people were editing their work. And of course, we were using Google Classroom, so we were able to edit and people could see the editing going on. Google Classroom was actually a great gift for us with this course, and that's something we need to think about going forward. The written work was assessed for grammar alone. Mistakes were highlighted but not corrected, so very much connecting to what Shana's been saying. This whole idea of ungrading, this concept of allowing the learner, as I've said in the next one, to say, you know, correct yourself, rely on yourself and trust your ears. And that really gives, I know, again, a cliche, but a real sense of ownership and confidence goes through the roof, and also creativity, because they are free to be creative. And it became so collaborative, but also individuals were really enjoying the process finally, having felt so nervous about writing and having such psychological barriers to it. It became a joy. And for those 10 weeks, I think if they were here now, they would all genuinely say they really enjoyed that element of that particular course. I think also the whole SPAG thing that we've been talking about, I've decided recently, teaching functional skills, perhaps up until the last few weeks when we're now preparing for the exam, which is next Thursday for both of my current cohorts, that with SPAG, I went to a complete highlight approach. So I had a colour coordinated approach for spelling, punctuation and grammar. So grammar highlighted in pink, spelling highlighted in yellow, punctuation and capitals highlighted in green. And I would just give that back to the learners, maybe with a few comments, but so then they would know what the mistake was, and then they could look at what they might have got wrong. So the highlights were there, but it was their job to correct, to maybe go away and sort that out for homework. All of this, of course, begs the question, as teachers will inevitably ask, what about those learners who couldn't spot mistakes? And learners are kind of tone deaf to certain mistakes that they make, particularly those that come from mother tongue interference that are very embedded. And so the question was, then what should we do if they can't spot the mistakes or they need some kind of direction with their correction? I very much appreciate that rhyme. I'm sorry, I've been an English teacher for too long. So secondly, we developed this kind of idea of bending the classroom. I've been reading about flipped classrooms. I'm sure you all know about this, where students are introduced to the content at home and then they practice it in class. So this has some connection with that idea. So learners were independently revisiting understanding of grammar rules at home using online resources. There are loads of fantastic websites now that allow you to access all sorts of different grammar exercises, and then you can self-mark. So they were taking photos, posting those on Google Classroom to show me how they've done, and then I could say, okay, we'll redo this one, but this is looking good. And they'd be doing that kind of legwork at home. And then, I'm sorry, I'm again blocking my own words, there we go. And then the learners would come into class with, well, this would depend on the situation. I would set them a creative writing task designed to use that particular grammar rule that they had been studying. So something different for tense work, something else for prepositions. I have all these resources on my Google Classroom now if anyone was interested to look at them, but different creative things that were related to grammar rules. So they only had to focus on one grammar rule and then enjoy writing about it. And then they would bring that to class and they would read out loud in class to the group, who would then help them, give them feedback. And then finally they would go away and then produce that kind of final corrected, perfect, in inverted commas, version for marking, where they would kind of refine it. This was one of the things that perhaps was a little disappointing, in that we didn't always have time for them to be able to do that. But some of those who were really committed absolutely took this on board and were really keen to kind of polish up what they'd done. And that was very exciting. I'm conscious of time because I have a little video I'd like to show, and it's not even this one. This started off as a standalone course, then I've been using it in my functional skills classes, and also we've now been able, with Louise's help, but we're developing it into a bridging course, which we're going to be using hopefully every term now, from now onwards. That concept of kind of focusing on something to help learners bridge from one level to another. This is a short video. In fact, I might not show it because I'm running out of time. This is a video of one of my learners. She's happy for me to show her name. I don't like calling people R and B, so this is Renata. She's told me she's happy. She's a Polish learner, and she initially was a bit skeptical about doing this on a one-to-one with me. So we were doing the approach just in extra lessons, but she's found it really, really helpful, which has been so exciting. And I just wanted to show you a bit of evidence of her work. So this is Renata in February, writing a very interesting and entertaining piece on why bras should be put into room 101. It's worth a read. And then in July, just last week, I think, we've gone from 18 grammar mistakes, you can see all the highlights there, to 8 last week. She has her exam next Thursday. Her confidence has gone through the roof. And for someone who has a lot of self-doubt, that's quite saying something. I've been so pleased to see the way, I mean, you can even see from the structure of the writing, her confidence is so much greater. She seems so fluent. It's really exciting, and she, for me, is a real success story. Perhaps the best one. Obviously, different people respond differently, but for her, it has really worked. So I would like to finish with this little video. I'm going to rush through a little bit because I'm so keen that people are able to watch this lovely learner. So I've said this approach has taught learners that they have absorbed more grammar than they realise, and it's given them the opportunity and confidence to apply it to their own writing. It really was a privilege to see them finding their individual creative writing voices and to share in the lives they committed to the page week by week. It was a deeply personal thing in many ways. And we are, as a service, looking forward to publishing an anthology of their writing, which is really exciting. That's from the learners on the Christmas term course, but maybe in future from others as well. And it's a collection which clearly shows learner progress over time, because there is this increased accuracy and ambition. And actually, interestingly, aside, spelling and punctuation improved as well, but that's another story. So I'd like to reflect the course, as I said, that was keenly focused on listening, by giving us an opportunity to listen to this learner, just to finish with, so I hope we've got time.
Right, ladies, it's lovely to catch up with you again. Haven't seen you for 7 months, and we just had a really nice chat about how things have been for you in the past year, really. And I just wanted you to share something about the impact that the course had on you, on your confidence in English, and how it's kind of helped you in life recently. So, Angela, if you'd like to start.
I I have done lots of different courses around here. When I came here, my English wasn't very good. So I did my ESOL. I finished my ESOL level 2. I finished my functional English. But the last we spent with you, the course was brilliant, really, really brilliant. It provided me especially essential knowledge, skill, and understanding that gave me a more confidence, so I can spend my life independently. And it's a very exciting news. I have a permanent job now, TA permanent job in my children's school, and all credit goes to you because you made me like this.
Oh, cool. It's all your hard work.
Yeah.
Just tell me quickly about how, because I know you have to go and pick your children up, how you have used the ideas that we talked about in your job, how working with the children has helped your own spoken and written English.
Yeah, I have you gave us lots of technical things, and I can use them with the children as well. So it is a very great help.
But you were talking too about how you listen to the children and how that helps.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I absorb the things from around me. In the beginning, when I came here, it was like I'm a deaf. I couldn't understand the people, and now I'm absorbing the words, the sentences from different around me. So it made a very big difference for me.
Fantastic. And I asked you both if you'd like to share something, one of your favorite pieces that you wrote on the course. And I think
my favorite piece, poetry always my favorite one, but I never tried before, and you gave us a very beautiful opportunity. So I wrote When I Am Old.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
So I am reading it for you. Thank you. When I am old, I will have a charming personality with shining grey hair, wearing a gown of sober, soft colors, covering my head with a stunning scarf. When I'm old, people around will treat me with respect, care, and value my words. When I am old, my children will give me back with interest what I am doing for them now. When I am old, I will still be teaching my grandchildren. When I am old, I won't be doing home chores, but I will be feeding my precious family with my special dishes. When I am old, all the dreams I have dreamed will come into view. All of my dreams will come true.
That's beautiful.
That's all.
Thank you very much. Lovely, a proper poetry reading. Thank you. That's great. Do you need to go now?
Thank you very much. If you allow me, I can collect my children from school.
Absolutely. It's been lovely to see you and lovely to talk to you, and all the best and congratulations on your job. That's
right. I think that's enough of that. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry if it took too long.
Okay, I was on mute, obviously. Thank you so much, Rachel. I mean, the feedback in the chat, you may not have had a chance to read, but people have been very moved, but also been extremely interested in your project. We're running out of time for questions, but what we're going to do is we're going to pop up on the Padlet. Your presentation is already up, and I think we'll find a way, if there's some questions that we haven't had a chance to answer, to get back to people, because I don't think we can do people's questions justice. But you know, I would say we really wanted to hear the video at the end, didn't we? Yeah, and that we heard it. So the links between the projects, you can see the creativity and how individuals who wouldn't normally see themselves as creative tapped into that for their self-expression, and that opened up lots of opportunities for them to enjoy writing. And my point as a teacher is sometimes what we do is we're focusing on the technical aspects so much, the joy goes out of writing. And I think on these projects, it's been a privilege to hear both Rachel and Nicola and Sean remind us of how much joy people can get from writing. And so I'm going to stop now, because I think we have to go on to our next thing. But it's fantastic, really enjoyed it, and thank you for everybody's comments in the chat.
Sonia, and it's been a great privilege to be working with all of you, so thank you all of you. I've really enjoyed it. Super. Thank you.
I can just echo what Sonia and Sue have said. That was absolutely fantastic. And Rachel, Sean and Nicola, you've got work there that will resonate across the whole of the FE sector. I know there will be people very, very excited to read your reports when they come out, and we'll encourage you to write in every space you can. And we'll talk more about that later.